The woman I share an apartment with is the kind of beautiful that makes you do a double take even when you're trying not to. That night she was in the bathroom taking a shower, and I was in the living room eating takeout, and half watching something on Netflix. Between us was a flimsy beat-up door with a busted lock. Basically a suggestion of privacy. Then a scream cut through the apartment. Before I could even process it, the bathroom door flew open and she stumbled out of the steam, panicked and shaking, clutching a towel to herself like it was the only thing keeping her together. I froze. Not in a dramatic movie hero way. More like my brain hit loading for 3 full seconds. The water heater. She gasped. There was a shock. I swallowed, forcing my eyes up to her face like a decent human being. Okay. First, forget the leak for a second. Please go put on some clothes. Now, I'm a content creator, which is a fancy way of saying I'm a broke freelancer who's still at that stage where your income is just enough to keep you from becoming a tragic lesson in budgeting. So, when it came to rent, I lived by one sacred rule. If it's cheap, you tolerate the pain. That's how I ended up in that apartment. Old building, 6th floor, walk up. No elevator. The kind of place where the hallway light flickers like it's trying to warn you. Inside, it wasn't minimalist. It was everything technically exists, but none of it works the way it should. The stove worked sort of. The faucets worked. If you convinced them, the doors closed. If you didn't expect locks, but I'm a guy. I didn't need it to be pretty. I needed a roof for walls, and enough space to sit at a desk and grind. Rent was $1,200 a month for a 2-bedroom in a rough, but convenient part of the city. Basically, a miracle. The only catch was that my landlord was the type to fix things with Wilk. It's fine. When the broker told me someone wanted to move into the 2nd bedroom, a woman, my first reaction was no. Not because I was some cartoon villain who hated roommates. Because I'm an adult and I don't believe in those unrealistic hot roommate fantasies people write online like life is a romantic comedy. In real life, roommates mean noise, mess, boundaries, and arguing about dishes at midnight. But then the broker sent me 2 things. First, a payment screenshot. Starting that month, rent would be split evenly. They'd Venmo me $600. Second, a photo. Her. And look, I'm not proud of how fast my brain went from absolutely not to okay. Maybe this won't be the worst thing. The day she moved in, I put on my best respectful normal human man face. I opened the door. I offered to help with her suitcase. I've got it, she said, already dragging it inside like she'd done this 100 times. I reached out anyway, then hesitated with my hand suspended in the air like I just remembered it wasn't my suitcase because suddenly I wasn't sure where my hand was supposed to go or how close was too close, or whether I was about to look like a creep. So I stepped aside and watched this tiny woman wrestle a suitcase that looked like it had its own zip code. I forgot to introduce myself. She didn't introduce herself either. She walked in, looked around, and her face tightened. I knew exactly what she was thinking. The apartment had a smell. Not garbage, not mold. Something older, like damp wood and stale air and years of people being disappointed in silence. I'd gotten used to it. She hadn't. You have a key? I asked, trying to sound casual. She nodded, making a small sound through her nose like she was already tired. Then she went into her room. That evening, I went out to meet a friend for dinner. By the time I got back, it was after 10 o'clock. Half asleep, I shuffled into my bedroom, tossed my jacket aside, then stopped because my room looked wrong. Not scary wrong, clean wrong. The floor had been swept. My papers were stacked. My desk looked organized in a way that felt illegal. For a second, I just stood there blinking like someone had swapped my room for a nicer version while I was gone. I won't lie, having a neat, freak roommate had its benefits. I slept like a king. The next morning, I sat down to work and immediately realized something was missing. My printed drafts gone. And more importantly, my USB drive. That little drive wasn't just storage. It was years of ideas, scripts, notes, outlines, audio clips. My entire creative brain in plastic form. I walked out trying to keep my voice calm. Hey Leia. That's what her name will be here because in my head she looks like she was in the bathroom brushing her teeth, hair tied up, pajama shirt hanging off one shoulder like she didn't care if gravity won. She mumbled around toothpaste. Did you clean my room yesterday? She nodded like it was obvious. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm grateful, I said carefully. But I had a couple sheets of paper on my desk. Did you see them? She spat, wiped her mouth, and said very casually, I tossed them. I stared. You tossed them? They had creepy drawings on them. She said as if that explained everything. I didn't want that in the house. I actually laughed once sharply, like my soul had slipped on a wet floor. I'm a paranormal creator. I draw creepy stuff. That's literally my job. She blinked like she'd never considered that detail. Then I forced myself to breathe. Okay, fine. Paper is paper, but my USB drive. Did you see that? Her eyes slid away. Nope, Leia, I said, trying not to sound like I was accusing her while absolutely accusing her. You were the only person in my room. She brushed past me like I was a chair. I didn't touch your little drive. Move. She grabbed her bag. I'm going to work. It's not about the size of the drive. I snapped, following her to the door. That thing has she waved me off. Then by another one. I'll pay you back if it makes you feel better. That wasn't the point. The point was someone had walked into my space, decided what mattered, and threw it away like it was trash. She left and the door slammed hard enough that dust drifted down from the frame like the apartment side. That night, she came home and tossed a brand new external hard drive onto the table. This one's bigger, she said. Harder to lose. I looked at it like it was a joke someone expected me to laugh at. I set it aside. We need to talk. She dropped her purse in her room, came back out, and flopped onto the couch like she owned the place. She tucked loose hair behind her ear. Talk. I'm not going to keep fighting over one lost drive, I said. But that doesn't mean it wasn't important. She opened her mouth probably to argue, so I cut in. Starting today, we're setting rules. Private areas, public areas. My room is my room. Yours is yours. We knock. We don't help by throwing away someone else's things. She stared at me, then shrugged. Fine. I wasn't trying to ruin your life. Congratulations, I said, because you were really close. And that's how we started our era of forced peace. Except Leia was the kind of person who learned your boundaries and then treated them like a jump rope. She'd knock, but her knock sounded like she was trying to break the door down. She'd walk into the bathroom while I was brushing my teeth because she forgot I was in there. She had zero survival instincts and even less practical sense. Once she asked me why my laundry came out cleaner than hers. I asked if she used detergent. She stared at me. You're supposed to add something. Another time she decided she was going to learn to cook, and I spent 10 minutes preventing her from turning the kitchen into a fire department training video. The only bright side was she learned fast, mostly because she was terrified of doing something wrong twice. Then July 16th rolled around. I knew it was her birthday because she spent the entire morning pacing around the living room mumbling like she was casting a spell. Please don't make me work late today. Please don't make me work late today. My sleep is usually solid, but listening to someone chant dread into the air will wake anyone up. By the time I came out to tell her to stop, she'd already left. Her bedroom door was slightly open. And when I walked past, I saw her desk, a takeout container, half a plain roll, a little bowl of congee, 2 tiny plastic cups of vegetables. That was her dinner from the night before. I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because it looked lonely. So, I went downstairs, bought groceries, and spent the next hour cooking while muttering to myself about how I'd lost my mind. When she came home, there were 4 dishes on the table and a small cake in the corner. She stared at it like it was a prank. You have friends coming over? She asked. I untied my apron. No, but there's a certain dummy who's having a birthday. She looked at me like I just spoke in another language. How did you know? I gave her a deadpan look. This morning, you were loud enough that the entire building could have RSVP'd. She covered her face embarrassed. Oh my god, I also bought beer. I said, if you want. She nodded. I don't drink much. Same. Elite. We had 6 beers total, 3 each. And she barely looked tipsy. I went downstairs and bought 6 more. At that point, I was warm and relaxed and just bold enough to ask, okay, be honest. How much can you actually handle? She hesitated, then held up one finger. Maybe one more. That should have been the end. But I'm a man, and men have this ancient cursed instinct that activates the second someone challenges them without meaning to. So I bought more. Not in a dangerous way, just in that dumb it's a celebration way. We ate, we laughed, we lit candles, she made a wish, and the cake was slightly dry, but neither of us cared. After that night, something shifted. We became friends in the most ordinary way. The kind of friends who sit on the couch eating snacks, watching shows, arguing about whether a character was being dumb on purpose. She liked my personality. I liked her presence. And yes, I liked looking up from my laptop and seeing a beautiful woman walking by in sweatpants with her hair tied up like she didn't know she was distracting. Then came the day of the shower incident. She screamed, rushed out of the bathroom in chaos, clutching a towel, hair dripping, eyes wide. I froze again purely out of shock. Water heater, she said. It shocked me. I forced myself into action. Okay, close. Now we'll deal with the heater after you're safe. She ran into her room. I unplugged the heater, checked it, and my stomach turned. It really was leaking current. I messaged the landlord. The water heater is unsafe. It needs to be replaced. The landlord replied. If you unplug it, it's fine. I stared at the screen, anger rising like a flame. I didn't send what I wanted to send. Instead, I put the phone down and muttered to myself, sure, great. Totally fine. The next day, somehow a new water heater showed up. After that, Leia avoided eye contact for weeks. Like the awkwardness had become a third roommate. Life went back to normal, until about 3 months later when my body decided to betray me. It started as stomach pain, sharp twisting. I tried to ignore it. Went to the bathroom a few times. Told myself it was something I ate. Then the cold sweats hit. I was sitting at my desk trying to work and sweat dripped onto my keyboard. My hands shook. My breathing got shallow. The pain turned into something that made the room tilt. I knew I needed a doctor. I managed to get to my bed and croak. Ela, can I use your phone? The second she saw me, her face changed. She ran to my side, pressed her hand to my forehead, and her palm came back wet with sweat. You're burning up, she said. I'm fine. Elite. No, you're not. She snapped, already grabbing her jacket. She got me up and somehow this woman who weighed half as much as I did got me down 6 flights of stairs. I kept telling her, we can call a rideshare. Please don't. That costs money, she said as if that was the main issue. Leia, I groaned. I might actually be dying. She tried to call a car anyway and couldn't get one. We realized she didn't have her phone. She looked at me, panicked. I forgot it. I ran out too fast. We stood under a street light in the middle of the night like 2 idiots in a tragic sitcom. Finally, she said, okay, nearest R is about a mile. I'm taking you. And she did. By the time we got there, she was drenched in sweat, practically collapsing in the hallway, but she still ran back to the apartment to get her phone and my ID, because the front desk needed information. When I finally got fluids and the pain eased, dawn was coming up. The doctor said it was severe gastritis. Painful but treatable. I looked at her sitting there exhausted, and something in my chest tightened. Thank you, I said quietly. She waved it off, but her eyes were red like she'd been scared and didn't want to admit it. After I recovered, I cooked a huge meal for her. She took one bite and said, "This is really good." Then she looked at me and half joking, half serious asked, "Can you cook for me forever?" I froze again, but in a different way. I nodded, thinking she meant something else. She grinned like a kid who'd gotten what she wanted, then added completely innocent, "I mean because it saves money and it's healthier than takeout." That was when I realized she wasn't flirting. She was just practical. From then on, she stopped ordering delivery at night and started begging me to cook. She called it healthy. I called it a full-time job. One evening, I made dinner and called her out. No answer. I waited, called again. Still nothing. I opened her door and found her face buried in her pillow, shoulders shaking. "Hey," I said softer. "What happened?" She didn't speak. "Did someone hurt you?" "Nothing." I felt frustration rising because I didn't know how to help her if she wouldn't talk. Then she lifted her head. Her eyes were red. Her voice was thin. "My boss has been targeting me." It wasn't complicated. She wasn't the type to stay late just to look dedicated. She left when her shift ended. She wasn't good at office politics. She'd taken a few days off when I got sick because she insisted on making sure I didn't pass out again. Her manager started pushing her toward quitting, hinting, pressuring, assigning her the worst tasks, then criticizing her for struggling. She didn't want to quit without severance. I understood exactly what kind of game they were playing. I patted her back once. "Okay, I've got you." Her company was a small, sketchy lending office, the kind of place that smiled while it trapped people in terrible terms. The next day, I put on my nicest shirt, shaved, and walked into their lobby like I belonged there. "Hi," the receptionist chirped. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said. "I need to talk to your manager." A few minutes later, a guy in a suit hurried over with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What can we help you with today?" I pretended to think. "I'm looking for a loan." "Absolutely," he said. "How much?" 200. His smile flickered. 200,000. $200, I said calmly. He stared. I leaned forward like I was about to confess a secret. "Actually, what if I wanted $200 million? He went pale. Then I took it further, talking like I was dead serious, asking ridiculous questions, wasting time, making him explain policies he didn't even understand. I left without giving my number. The next day, I came back and the next after a week they figured out I was messing with them. Security stopped me at the door. So I did what content creators do. I posted online, not attacking anyone, not naming the company, just asking for advice and sharing a fictionalized bad workplace story. The response was wild. People offered suggestions, real ones like labor complaints, documentation, and how to demand severance properly. Others were just creative. The internet has a talent for turning anger into comedy. I filtered out the nonsense and used the useful parts. And one day, the manager called Leia. 5 minutes later, she burst into my room like a firework. "They agreed," she said, breathless. "They're giving me severance." "How did you do that?" I smiled. "Positive energy." She squinted. "That's not true." "It's true enough," I said. I went with her on resignation day because I didn't trust them not to pull something. When the manager saw me, his face looked like he'd bitten a lemon. I waved politely. Leia stared at me like I was some kind of secret superhero. After that, she took a week off, slept in, ate my cooking, complained she'd gained weight, but she looked healthier than she had since moving in. Then she started applying for jobs. One afternoon, she called me, practically yelling through the phone. I got one. My chest tightened before I could stop it. "Congrats." "Where?" "Administrative," she said. "In Midtown." Midtown meant a long commute from our neighborhood. That night, we drank a little to celebrate. Later, we sat by the window looking at the moonlight. I tried to sound casual. "So, when are you moving out? Need help?" She tilted her head, studying me like I'd said something weird. "Why would I move out?" "Because it's far," I said. "An hour each way." She shrugged. "That's not that bad." I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. "I used to complain about 40 minutes, she said, then stopped like she'd remembered something. I laughed soft. "If they mess with you again, tell me I've got you." She looked at me, then said completely seriously, "Well, you cook better than anyone. That's reason enough to stay." And just like that, two lonely people didn't feel quite as lonely. Then the landlord showed up. He walked in one evening while we were sitting in pajamas, hair a mess, eating dinner together like an old married couple who didn't want to admit it. He stared at us. Sorry. Anyway, I'm selling the place. You both need to move out." I blinked. "What?" "I'll pay the penalty," he said quickly. 2 months like the lease says." Leia sat there chewing a drumstick, staring at her plate like she was trying to decide whether she was angry or sad. The landlord kept talking nervous. "So can you be out in 3 days?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to yell, but landlords don't care about your feelings. 3 days, I said tightly. "Fine." That last dinner in the apartment felt strange. No ver, no laughter. Just small talk that didn't connect. "So," I said eventually, "where are you going?" She swallowed. "Probably closer to Midtown." "And you?" she asked. I stared at my food. "Somewhere quieter, maybe farther out, cheaper, more space to think." She nodded. Neither of us asked the obvious question. Are we still living together? Because time had moved too fast. From strangers to enemies to roommates to friends to something softer. Too fast. If we'd had 6 more months, maybe I would have found the courage to say what my chest had been holding. But that night, it felt like saying it would make me look like I'd been waiting for an excuse. I helped her carry her boxes downstairs. At the curb, she brushed dust off my shoulder like it mattered. Have a safe move, I said. She shifted awkwardly. Do we hug? My throat tightened and I tried to act tough. A hug? Come on, we're not in a movie. She laughed, then suddenly stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me anyway. Thank you, she said into my shoulder. For everything. I stood there stiff at first, then held her back. When she pulled away, I couldn't think of anything to say that didn't sound like it mattered too much. So, I watched her leave and it felt like watching something I never got to name disappear down the street. After she left, our messages stopped. The last chat was dated September 6th. I moved the next day. My friends helped loud and joking, making it feel like a party, even though my chest was hollow. That night, we went out for barbecue and beer, and one of them, already tipsy, asked what happened to the cute roommate. She moved, I said flatly. Why didn't you move with her? I shot him a look. She works in Midtown. What am I supposed to do? Chase her like a lost puppy? Another friend leaned in. Be honest. Do you like her? I kicked his chair. You're drunk. Shut up. He grinned. If you like her, we'll help you. I like you, I said. And I hate you. Then one of them asked. If you live alone, why do you rent another 2-bedroom? The words hit me like a door slamming. Because he was right. Why did I? The place I picked wasn't even cheap. And it wasn't far from Midtown. Like some part of me had been quietly hoping she'd come back. Life settled again. I cooked more than I needed. I cleaned more than I used to. I still tested the water stream before showers, even with a brand new heater, just to be sure. I told myself it was fine. Then came the storm. Rain hammered the windows like it was being chased. Lightning flashed, thunder shaking the building. I sat at my desk working on a spooky concept, trying to decide which was scarier, something under the bed or something outside the door. Without thinking, I bent down and looked under the bed. And I froze. Not because I saw something paranormal. Because I saw my USB drive, the one Leia had lost. I yanked everything out from under the bed. Old bags, clothes, random junk, and found a duff I'd shoved there during my move. The zipper had been open, clothes had spilled, and the USB must have fallen out and disappeared into the mess. I stared at it, and suddenly I could picture her cleaning my old room, wrinkling her nose, stuffing my scattered things into a bag, tossing it aside like she was annoyed I lived like a feral raccoon. I laughed just once because it was ridiculous. I blamed her, and she'd replaced it anyway. The storm hit harder. Then someone knocked. Not a polite knock, a pounding knock. I jumped, heart racing, and went to the door. When I opened it, Leia stood there, soaked, hair wet, suitcase beside her, breathing hard like she'd run through the rain without caring what it did to her. She pushed inside like she'd never left, looked around and said, Your broker is a scammer. I blinked. What? I found your new address through him, she said, dragging her suitcase toward the second bedroom like she already knew where it was. And he tried to charge me a fee. I said no. I stared, stunned. So you came here? She shrugged. I'd rather just transfer rent directly to you. Cut out the middleman. I couldn't move for a second. Then I stepped forward and before I could overthink it, pulled her into a quick, tight hug. She stiffened, then laughed against my shoulder. That's a weird way to greet a roommate. Go shower, I said, trying to sound normal. You're going to catch a cold. She raised an eyebrow. Is the water heater safe? It is, I said. You're the one who made me paranoid. She smirked. Good. I took her wet coat, hung it up and said, After you shower, eat. I made too much food. She rolled her eyes. You always say you made too much. I rubbed the back of my neck, embarrassed. Yeah, I don't know why. She patted her stomach like it was already decided because your food is good and I always end up coming back. I watched her disappear down the hall, and the storm outside didn't sound as loud anymore.